Boone County, established in 1798, honors the legacy of frontiersman Daniel Boone. As Kentucky's fourth most populous county, it boasts an international airport, historic landmarks, recreational areas, and a thriving agricultural sector, with Burlington serving as its county seat. In 1976, this picturesque region was marred by a tragic event. On November 28, 1959, Carol Sue Klaber was born to Daniel Henry Klaber and Betty Jane Meek Renneker, filling their lives with joy. Her older brother Thomas welcomed her with wonder, eager to embrace his new sibling. Carol Sue Klaber's vibrant personality shone through her sharp wit, humility, and compassion for those less fortunate. At just 16, she volunteered at St. Charles Nursing Home, demonstrating her empathetic nature. Her early involvement in Brownies and Girl Scouts laid the foundation for her caring attitude. Carol's diverse interests included cooking, sewing, and music, which brought her immense joy. She began piano lessons at 5, and later took up the violin, showcasing her talent at the Ohio Music Teacher Association, and twice at the Taft Museum. As a cherished member of Dixie Heights High School's string ensemble, Carol's passion for music resonated with her classmates, who admired her kindness and outgoing personality. On June 5, 1976, the tranquil town of Union, Kentucky, awakened to a typical day. A respected Walton dentist started his day early, prepared to attend to his patients. While driving down Chambers Road, he noticed something unusual near the roadside. Curiosity piqued, he pulled over and approached the object. Only upon closer inspection did he realize the grim discovery. A lifeless body lay beside a culvert, a drainage pipe for rainwater, its stillness a stark contrast to the serene surroundings. Overcome with shock and trembling, the doctor contacted the Kentucky State Police, prompting a swift response from a seasoned investigator, formerly with the Boone County Sheriff's Department. The detective hastened to the scene to unravel the mystery surrounding the lifeless body. At 7:15 a.m., Walton State Police Department detectives arrived, meticulously scanning the area. Their trained eyes detected signs of a fierce struggle. Snapped twigs and trampled grass hinted at a violent confrontation. A short distance away, the victim's body bore evidence of a brutal attack and strangulation. As the investigators' dread grew, they realized this was no random act of violence, but a premeditated murder. Undeterred, they vowed to exhaust all avenues in pursuit of justice. Despite their diligence, concrete evidence eluded them. Shifting focus, the investigators turned to the victim's body for clues, sending it to the county medical examiner's lab for a thorough autopsy. The medical examiner conducted a meticulous autopsy, scrutinizing every detail of the victim's body for potential clues. Each injury, no matter how minor, was meticulously documented and analyzed. The autopsy's grim findings revealed the brutality of her death. The evidence indicated a savage beating, with the victim's body bearing signs of a tire iron's relentless force. Her once angelic face now showed bruising and swelling, and deep scalp lacerations suggested a blunt object's impact. The catastrophic head injury proved fatal. Heart-wrenching signs of abuse and severe physical trauma were also evident. The cause of death was ultimately determined to be asphyxia, due to manual strangulation and blunt force trauma to the head. This shocking discovery infused the investigation with renewed urgency. As investigators analyzed scene evidence, they found foreign DNA traces on the victim's clothing. Despite their diligent efforts, no matches were found in existing databases at the time. With faith in future technological breakthroughs, investigators meticulously preserved evidence, hoping it would crack the case. Through relentless efforts, detectives located Carol's brother, Thomas Klaber, who mustered the courage to identify her body. At 23, Thomas entered the morgue, his heart heavy with grief. As he gazed upon his sister's lifeless form, tears flowed uncontrollably. Overwhelmed by pain, Thomas knew he'd never hear Carol's laughter or see her radiant smile again. Investigators left no stone unturned, canvassing the community, speaking with residents, and gathering information. They delved into Carol's past, consulting family and friends to understand her life and potential enemies. Their inquiry revealed June 4, 1976, was an ordinary day for the Klabers. Carol, a carefree 16-year-old, rode her bike through town, her hair blowing in the wind, her face alight with joy. Carol spent the day greeting locals, chatting with friends, and soaking up the summer sunshine. Later, she planned to meet a friend at Zeno's Hyde Park restaurant at 5:30 p.m. But as the sun set, a young man in a stylish Chevrolet Monte Carlo arrived at her doorstep. A neighbor recalled the man's striking features: sandy blonde hair, 6 feet tall, and slender. They exchanged words before Carol briefly entered her house, leaving him waiting outside. Moments later, Carol returned, got into the car, and drove away with the mysterious stranger. Tragically, this marked the last time anyone saw Carol alive. Despite investigators' tireless efforts to track down the Chevrolet Monte Carlo's owner, the case went stale. Leads dwindled, and the investigation hit a dead end, leaving authorities perplexed. For over 40 years, the case remained cold until 2017, when 2 dedicated Boone County Sheriff's Office cold case detectives, Coy Cox and Tim Adams, revitalized the investigation, bringing newfound hope to solving Carol Sue Klaber's murder. Driven by a shared commitment to unraveling the truth, detectives Coy Cox and Tim Adams collaborated with Jerry Keith, the original investigator, who had kept Carol Sue Klaber's case close to his heart even in retirement. Together, they embarked on a tireless quest for justice. Leveraging modern technology, they meticulously re-examined old evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and pursued fresh leads to shed new light on the baffling tragedy. Their investigation focused on 2 prime suspects previously identified by Keith. The first suspect had a history of car theft and owned a vehicle strikingly similar to the one Carol was last seen in. Under intense scrutiny, the suspect denied involvement in Carol's murder, divulging past misdeeds but maintaining innocence. The detectives collected his DNA for comparison with the 1976 DNA evidence from Carol's clothing. The suspenseful wait for DNA analysis ended in December 2018, with the arrival of the results. Cox and Adams delivered life-changing news to the cleared suspect, ending his ordeal. With renewed focus, they redirected their efforts toward capturing Carol's killer. Their attention shifted to the second suspect, Michael Dean Tate, convicted of a heinous sexual assault in the same area in 1978. Now 77, Tate's past crime bore unsettling similarities to Carol's murder. To strengthen their case, Cox and Adams reached out to Tate's 1978 victim, seeking her account. Though her identity remained confidential, her recollection was vivid. She recounted the October 1, 1978 attack in Park Hills. At 2 a.m., in her garage, she fought and screamed, but her assailant derived twisted pleasure from her pain. The victim's harrowing testimony provided valuable insight, fueling Cox and Adams' determination to bring justice to Carol Sue Klaber's family. The 1978 assault victim endured 2 hours of terror, left bleeding and broken, but miraculously alive. Her recovery from physical and emotional scars took years. Cox and Adams noted Tate's connection to the 1978 case and couldn't disregard the possibility of his involvement in Carol's murder. Tate's frequent 1970s and 1980s travels to the area for work heightened suspicion. Despite mounting evidence, Tate maintained innocence and denied involvement in Carol's death. Hopes were dashed when DNA analysis didn't match Tate's, and court documents revealed he lived in Cincinnati in 1976, making it impossible for him to commit the crime. The case went dormant again, leaving detectives wondering if closure would ever be achieved. For nearly half a century, the mystery persisted until September 17, 2022, when the Boone County Sheriff's Office sought expertise from Othram Lab in genetic genealogy. The Boone County Sheriff's Office partnered with Othram Labs, funded by Season of Justice, to revive the cold case. The Kentucky State Police Central Forensic Center provided Othram with the 1976 crime scene DNA sample. Othram's experts utilized advanced genome sequencing to construct a complete DNA profile of the suspect. This cutting-edge technology uncovered valuable genetic information hidden for decades. Othram's genealogy team generated investigative leads using forensic genetic genealogy. Astonishingly, they delivered a breakthrough in under 2 months. On November 25, 2022, analysis revealed a connection to Thomas W. Dunaway, deceased in 1990 at 33. Detectives learned Dunaway had a son, whose identity remained confidential. Investigators met with Dunaway's son to collect DNA samples for comparison. The lab results would be crucial in solving the long-elusive mystery. Driven by an unwavering resolve to uncover the truth and a steadfast commitment to justice, investigators meticulously gathered the required samples. This marked the culmination of the extensive investigation, finally yielding resolution on December 12, 2022. The strategic application of cutting-edge technology, coupled with the detectives' unrelenting dedication, ultimately secured justice for Carol Sue Klaber and her loved ones, nearly 46 years after the tragic event. The pivotal moment arrived when Dunaway's son's DNA exhibited a partial match with the DNA traces found on Carol's body decades earlier. Although the journey was arduous, the persistence of all parties involved ultimately yielded a groundbreaking discovery, paving the way for closure for those impacted by the devastating events of 1976. Law enforcement remained resolute in their pursuit of justice for Carol Sue Klaber. Thomas W. Dunaway, born May 20, 1957, had evaded detection for years, despite being just 19 at the time of the crime. Through unyielding perseverance, investigators uncovered critical insights into Dunaway's troubled past and his evil actions. Further inquiry revealed Dunaway's residence in proximity to Dunaway Park, the very location where Carol was last spotted, with a man bearing a striking resemblance to him. As investigators dug deeper, additional incriminating evidence against Dunaway came to light. Thomas Dunaway's criminal history extended far beyond Carol Sue Klaber's murder, marked by a 6-month spree of illicit activities that left a trail of evidence in its wake. The vehicles used for escape served as a lingering reminder of his crimes. Tragically, Dunaway's violence didn't stop with Klaber. 6 months later, 19-year-old Ron Townsend was found lifeless and riddled with bullets in December 1976. The community reeled from the loss, but found solace when Dunaway was apprehended and confessed to the crime. Dunaway received a life sentence, yet served only 7.5 years before release in 1984. This raises haunting questions. Was justice truly served, or merely an ephemeral illusion? Detective Coy Cox painstakingly uncovered Dunaway's chilling pattern of violence and darkness. Though justice may have eluded Carol's case, law enforcement exposed the full extent of Dunaway's deadly reign. A disturbing commonality linked the murders of Carol Sue Klaber and Ron Townsend. Both victims lay in plain sight, mere inches from the road, suggesting the killer sought to make a gruesome statement. Dunaway's actions revealed a calculated disregard for human life, leaving an indelible mark on the lives he touched. As authorities dug deeper, they discovered a disturbing detail about Dunaway. He was absent without leave from the army at the time of Townsend's murder. Dunaway had enlisted merely 9 days after Carol's death, initially assigned to Fort Knox before transferring to Fort Carson in Colorado. Despite military service, Dunaway's penchant for trouble persisted. His passion for cars led to his downfall. Trading his cherished 1973 Chevrolet Monte Carlo for an attention-grabbing orange Chevrolet Vega ultimately drew detectives' attention. Investigating Ron Townsend's murder, detectives issued an all-points bulletin for Dunaway and his distinctive orange Vega. This cat-and-mouse game ended on Christmas Eve 1976, with Dunaway's arrest in South Carolina on charges of murder and illegal firearm possession. As investigators probed Carol Sue Klaber's murder, they struggled to understand the connection between her and Thomas Dunaway. The bond between victim and perpetrator remained perplexing, fueling further investigation. Dunaway's military history and penchant for illicit activities raised questions about his motivations and actions, leaving authorities determined to unravel the mysteries surrounding his crimes. Although Carol Sue Klaber and Thomas Dunaway may have attended the same Erlanger-Ellesmere school district during their formative years, the nature of their later connection remained unclear. Detective Coy Cox, however, uncovered a crucial clue: Carol's fondness for Dunaway Park. This scenic haven held special significance for Carol, potentially leading to a chance encounter with Dunaway. Given her outgoing personality, it's plausible they met at the park, sharing stories and laughter amidst its tranquil surroundings. Their paths may have intersected in this picturesque setting, forging an unfortunate bond. Notably, Dunaway resided mere blocks away from Carol's favorite bike-riding spot. The revelation of Thomas Dunaway as Carol's killer brought a complex mix of emotions, relief and sorrow. While authorities consider the case closed, The Klaber family feels conflicted, knowing Dunaway passed away on December 28, 1990, at just 33. Despite truth and closure, justice seems elusive for the Klaber family. The knowledge of Dunaway's culpability provides some solace, but also underscores the permanence of their loss. Thomas Klaber grappled with the concept of justice, longing to confront Thomas Dunaway before his premature death in 1990. The painful memory of Carol's murder has haunted him for nearly 5 decades, leaving an indelible mark. Fear of another tragedy persistently weighs on Thomas's mind, fueling his protective instincts toward his 28-year-old son, Daniel. Late-night check-in calls have become a routine, driven by the unbearable thought of losing another loved one. This lingering dread reminds Thomas of life's fragility and the importance of cherishing every moment with those dear to him. The prospect of disturbing Carol's final resting place was too much to bear. The thought of disrupting her peaceful repose, even to bring her killer to justice, weighed heavily on Thomas's heart. Fortunately, detectives found an alternative. Instead of exhuming Carol's remains, they exhumed Dunaway's body, providing a measure of solace for Thomas. Though this justice differs from what Thomas had hoped for, knowing his sister's grave remains undisturbed brings a small sense of comfort, alleviating some of the pain and closure that has eluded the Klaber family for so long. For Thomas Klaber, small victories bring solace, particularly knowing his sister now rests in peace. Detective Cox's unwavering determination sought justice at all costs, exemplified by his successful court order to exhume Dunaway's body for DNA testing. The DNA's entry into the combined DNA index system marks a new chapter in the pursuit of justice, with Cox prepared to tackle forthcoming challenges. After nearly 5 decades, justice has been served for Carol Sue Klaber. Though Dunaway cannot face trial, Boone County Commonwealth's attorney, Lewis Kelly, deemed the case closed. Detective Cox emotionally shared the moment of truth with Carol's brother, bringing tears to his eyes. While the past cannot be altered, knowing the truth brings a measure of comfort amidst tragedy. The tireless efforts of Detective Coy Cox and his team solved the 46-year-old mystery, identifying Thomas W. Dunaway as Carol Sue Klaber's killer. This case exemplifies law enforcement's unwavering dedication to securing justice for victims and their families, no matter the time elapsed. The Klaber family's perseverance and Detective Cox's unrelenting pursuit of truth have finally brought closure. In 1993, on a fateful spring evening in Huntington, West Virginia, a lone gunshot pierced the nocturnal calm. A mysterious figure vanished into the darkness enveloping the alley. Police responded to find a young woman gravely beaten and clinging to life with a single gunshot wound. Although the sensational case initially captivated local attention, it gradually grew cold as leads dwindled over time. 30 years later, in a surprising twist, the murder mystery would resurface during the investigation of an unrelated crime in a neighboring county. Questions still linger. Who was behind the senseless murder of a young woman striving to rebuild her life? Was the victim an unfortunate victim of circumstance, or did she have a fatal connection to her killer? Nestled in the western foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, Huntington, West Virginia, offers a picturesque backdrop for residents and visitors. This charming city, home to Marshall University's esteemed Thundering Herd football team, boasts a unique blend of colonial architecture and modern amenities. Strategically situated at the confluence of the Ohio and Guyandota rivers, Huntington ranks as the second busiest inland port in the United States. It was in this appealing city that 25-year-old Melissa Martinez sought to rebuild her life. Born between 1968 and 1969, Melissa had family ties to both Huntington and Las Vegas, where her mother resided. In Huntington, Melissa shared a residence with her friend, Marie Sadler, on Darnell Road. Sadler recalled Melissa's recent spiritual awakening, having started attending church and showing promise for a brighter future. According to a former Cabell County Jail assistant chaplain, Melissa had rededicated her life to Christ just 2 months prior to her tragic demise. During her detention for unspecified charges, Melissa confided in the chaplain. Melissa's past was marked by alleged involvement in sex work and minor brushes with the law. While the reasons behind her choices remain unclear, It's plausible that hardship drove her to seek survival through this means. Melissa reinvented herself as Lisa Ann, leaving her past behind. In Huntington, she found a new sense of belonging among friends who became her surrogate family. Tragically, her chosen profession likely led to her demise. On March 16, 1993, witnesses reported a violent altercation in a darkened alley between 4th and 5th Avenue. At approximately 1400 block, cries for help pierced the early morning air as a man brutally assaulted a woman. A single deadly gunshot echoed through the alley, prompting urgent calls to the police. Rushing to the scene, officers discovered a young woman clinging to life on the sidewalk, her body battered and bruised. She suffered severe lacerations to her head and face, coupled with a devastating gunshot wound to her torso. Medical teams fought against time to save her, swiftly transporting her to Cabell County Hospital. Despite valiant efforts, Melissa's injuries proved fatal, and she succumbed shortly after arrival. The medical examiner's office in South Charleston released an autopsy report detailing the severity of Melissa's injuries: a single chest gunshot wound and blunt force trauma to her head and face. Acting swiftly, law enforcement canvassed the area, seeking witness accounts to piece together the events surrounding Melissa's murder. A local couple, familiar with Melissa, described the gunshot as deafening, jolting them awake. Dozens of interviews were conducted, with police initially focusing on Ricky Louis Woody, a 30-year-old identified by witnesses as a potential prime suspect. Although Woody was questioned, investigators couldn't establish a definitive link between him and Melissa, nor uncover any prior relationship. Insufficient evidence precluded formal charges. Released but still considered a person of interest, Woody remained on the radar. Meanwhile, the investigation continued, hindered by media scrutiny surrounding Melissa's occupation. Public perception began to question the police's commitment to solving the case, as progress stalled. In a 1993 newspaper interview, Detective Carl Brooks of the Huntington Police Department emphasized the lead-driven nature of the investigation. "Our next steps depend on where the leads take us." During the initial investigation, authorities were unaware that Lisa Ann was an alias, only discovering the victim's true identity as Melissa Martinez through meticulous inquiry. Upon learning her actual name, police reached out to Melissa's family, who requested anonymity due to concerns of public stigma related to her occupation. In an anonymous 1993 interview with the Herald-Dispatch, one of Melissa's brothers shared his perspective, revealing uncertainty about her decision to engage in sex work, which he described as her chosen lifestyle. Despite seeking anonymity, the brother expressed his enduring love for Melissa, and fretted that police might lose momentum in the investigation once public interest waned. He confided in the newspaper, "I've prepared my mother in Las Vegas for the possibility that Lisa's killers may never be found." He feared societal apathy, admitting, "Most people think she was trash. I hope the police don't share that view." Melissa's murder sparked widespread attention, but the focus on her alleged sex work overshadowed the brutal nature of her death. News outlets sensationalized her occupation, reducing her to a stereotype rather than acknowledging her humanity. Friends and loved ones felt Melissa was being exploited for ratings, her personhood erased. In contrast, her family maintained a private grief, eschewing media scrutiny. In Huntington, Melissa's friends openly mourned her loss and initiated fundraising efforts to honor her memory. Local newspapers covered their endeavors, which aimed to erect a granite memorial stone. Though the memorial stone never materialized, a poignant gesture followed. A week later, a cross was nailed to a utility pole near the alley where Melissa's body was discovered. Inscribed on the cross were the words, "Don't let Lisa die in vain." Melissa's close friend expressed the group's sentiments. "Lisa was like family to us. With no memorial, we sought to give her dignity." Lynn Ray and her husband, residents of the alley where Melissa was tragically murdered, remembered her as a dear friend, undeserving of her fate, regardless of her lifestyle choices. "Melissa was sweet and quiet," Lynn recalled. "She only worked the streets around rent time." The makeshift memorial cross, erected near the crime scene, served as a poignant call to action. Regrettably, the cross was soon removed. 7 days after Melissa's passing, a former jail chaplain expressed his distress to local newspapers, emphasizing Melissa's redemption and recent recommitment to Christianity. Person fondly described Melissa as a sweet lady, worrying that her memory might be disregarded. He advocated for justice and recognition of her inherent worth. 8 days after her death, a family spokesperson announced plans to cremate Melissa's body and transport it to her mother in Las Vegas. The arrangements had been delayed due to necessary documentation proving Melissa's legal divorce, enabling the family to assume responsibility for her remains and facilitate their release. Melissa Martinez's case languished for years, despite her friends' efforts to preserve her memory. Leads fizzled out, and her killer remained at large, consigning the investigation to the cold case files. However, nearly 3 decades later, a sudden breakthrough revitalized interest in the forgotten case. In December 2020, an arrest in Billings, Montana, unexpectedly linked back to the events of March 16, 1993. Ricky Louis Woody, then 59, was taken into custody on unrelated charges. Having left Huntington just a year after Melissa's murder, Woody's past finally caught up with him. The arrest stemmed from domestic violence allegations, where the victim accused Woody of assault with a bat, physical intimidation, phone destruction, and death threats. During his incarceration for domestic violence, Woody allegedly attempted to coerce individuals into persuading the victim to retract her statements. During the investigation into Woody's current case in Billings, detectives uncovered a startling connection to a decades-old mystery. Woody initially claimed familiarity with the perpetrator of a 1990s Huntington murder, involving a woman named Lisa. Under further questioning, Woody revealed additional details, eventually confessing to direct involvement in the crime. In May 2021, Billings police contacted the Huntington Police Department to inquire about potential cold cases matching Woody's description. One case resonated: Melissa Martinez's unsolved murder. Huntington police revisited the cold case, discovering previously elusive links. Notably, Woody had been the sole suspect during the initial 1993 investigation. Although lacking sufficient evidence at the time, Woody's reemergence brought closure to the case. The Huntington Police Department's re-examination of the evidence, combined with Woody's confession, finally solved Melissa Martinez's 28-year-old murder. Justice, long delayed, was now within reach for Melissa's family and friends, thanks to the diligent efforts of investigators in Billings and Huntington, who painstakingly connected the dots between past and present. Huntington investigators traveled to Montana in September 2021 to re-question Ricky Louis Woody, who was being held for domestic violence. They gained the necessary evidence to link Woody to Melissa Martinez's murder. Huntington Police Chief Carl Colder noted that Woody was always a prime suspect, but the confession sealed the case. Woody's confession led to his indictment by a Cabell County grand jury in September 2022, and official charges in October 2022, for the murder of Melissa Martinez, also known as Lisa Ann, on March 16, 1993. Before facing trial for Melissa's murder, Woody must first address the Montana charges that led to his initial arrest. Once resolved, he'll be extradited to West Virginia to answer for Melissa's murder, according to a Cabell County Circuit Court spokesperson. Ricky Woody is currently in custody in Montana, facing multiple felony charges, including fugitive from justice and assault with a weapon, with a bond of $50,000. Although he has waived extradition to West Virginia, his transfer is pending resolution of his Montana cases. Subsequently, in 2024, Ricky Woody pleaded guilty to first-degree murder on Tuesday, January 16th, in connection to the death of Melissa Martinez. Woody then received a sentence of 10 years to life with mercy, which will run concurrent with a sentence he is currently serving in Montana. Once Woody completes his sentence in Montana, he will be placed in the custody of the West Virginia Department of Corrections to serve the remainder of this new sentence.